Hi, everyone. It's Laurie-Marie here. Today, I'm joined by Megan Klingham, Rhode Island's mental health advocate. Meg is an attorney who has spent years helping vulnerable Rhode Islanders. The Office of the Mental Health Advocate and Mahari collaborate on issues from time to time, and I can attest that Meg is a dedicated, smart, talented, and most importantly, compassionate legal advocate for people with mental illness. And today she and I will talk about what the Office of the Mental Health Advocate does and who it serves and when people should reach out to them. And my hope is that people will become more aware of this resource and utilize the office whenever is necessary. So welcome, Meg. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Laurie, and thank you for the kind words.
Oh, I mean every word of them. It's so wonderful to partner with you, and you inspire me to keep fighting the good fight every day.
Thank you. Same. Thank you.
Meg, what is the Office of the Mental Health Advocate? What does it do?
So we are a small independent state agency. There are 5 of us. We were just able to hire a new attorney. So it's myself, 3 other attorneys, and our office manager. We, as I say, an independent state agency. A lot of people mistakenly think that we work for, say, the Attorney General's office or the Department of Behavioral Health, Developmental Disabilities and Hospitals, but we do not. We are our own entity reporting right to the governor. We represent people with serious persistent mental illness in a number of different legal situations that occur. We represent people living with serious persistent mental illness who are subject to involuntary treatment through the civil court certification process. We represent people who are facing evictions or losing their housing based on various issues that could come up related to their illness. We also represent clients and fight for their treatment rights. So people who are in treatment with, say, community mental health center or on a psychiatric unit at one of the hospitals or at Eleanor Slater Hospital and the new Rhode Island State Psychiatric Hospital. We represent people and advocate for treatment rights. That's an overview of what we do. Then every so often, different things come up that we try to help with as we can. We also do a lot of referrals. A lot of people call us. They don't realize that we're a law office. So we get a lot of questions about things that really aren't legal in nature, but we try very hard to connect people with the right resources. If we don't have the answer, we try and find it and connect people with the right resource.
So you provide legal assistance and you're an advocate for people with serious persistent mental illness.
Yes, and another thing that we do is legislative advocacy. So that's something that we work with Mahari on frequently. So we advocate for legislation that is fair and equitable, that will enhance people's lives rather than take away their rights. Do a lot of advocacy for funding of the system to fund a full continuum of care. And something that you've been working on, which is very impressive, and you've done a great job with it, is creating an Olmstead plan for Rhode Island. We try to advocate for a full continuum of services and funding of that continuum of services so that our clients can live in the least restrictive option available.
And Meg, when you talk about serious persistent mental illness, do you require that people who contact your office have a particular diagnosis or and some kind of confirmation from a behavioral health provider, or how do you decide who you work with?
We do not. By statute, we represent people who are consumers of the community mental health system. Okay. So people who are receiving services from one of the CMHCs or people in the psychiatric hospitals. We don't request any kind of a verification, but just by its very nature, for example, if somebody is being held involuntarily at a psychiatric hospital, by its very nature, they have a serious persistent mental illness. And if they don't, then we work very hard to get them out of that situation.
And are your services free? Sort of like the public defender's office would be free if someone needed that?
Yes, we represent people who are indigent or are unable to afford their own attorneys. So yes, it's much like the public defender's office. We do not charge.
And then I have a question for you. Like many other states in the country, Rhode Island's largest psychiatric institution is our prison. And can you talk a little bit about why we incarcerate so many people who have serious persistent mental illness?
That's a big question. I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of the main core reasons is that we lack a robust continuum of care out in the community. So a lot of people are untreated or undertreated, and situations that arise due to undertreated or untreated mental illness can bring people to the attention of first responders, the police, and with the lack of anywhere else to provide the services, people get locked up, and I often hear them say, for their own good. You know, people come before a court, they're acting in a way that's concerning to the court, but there's no immediate answer to it, so that, as I've seen over many years, people tend to get detained at the ACI kind of as a place where they can get evaluated, a place where people can figure out, do they need to be here, or is there some kind of services in the community? But of course, that's a terrible, terrible place to find out what services a person needs. And through no fault of their own, the Department of Corrections is just not equipped to handle people with these issues. It's not a hospital, it's a prison. So I think the lack of investment in the community system of care, I think stigma to some extent. People don't realize sometimes somebody might be acting in a way that people don't understand. So again, the authorities are called. And then once that happens, often things can escalate in a way that they never should have in the first place. So I think that brings a lot of people in contact with the criminal justice system. Well, I should say criminal legal system, not criminal justice system. You know, homelessness, the lack of housing opportunities for people causes all sorts of problems. Poverty causes all sorts of problems that affects people, unfortunately, with serious persistent mental illness more than the general population, I would say, or a lot of people. So I think there are a myriad of reasons why people are incarcerated, none of them good as far as what we're talking about.
Yes, it's a very sad state of affairs when our prisons are our biggest psychiatric institution. And like you said, they're not equipped, they don't have the expertise to help this very vulnerable population. And to imagine the conditions that someone who's in a crisis or someone who lives with a very serious disability is experiencing in a prison and how vulnerable they are, it's just very sad, very sad.
It's very sad. And as I say, I think that the Department of Corrections does the best that they can, but it's simply not an appropriate place for people. A lot of, when I said I advocate for clients' treatment rights, we're fairly involved with people who are held at the prison, either sentenced or who are more likely just being held on pending charges before they're even sentenced, who don't belong there. Many of whom actually would be much better served at Eleanor Slater Hospital, well, what's now the Rhode Island State Psychiatric Hospital. So we do a lot of advocacy for trying to get people who find themselves in that system over to the hospital where they could actually receive treatment. That's a tough uphill battle, I can tell you. You know, unlike the Department of Corrections, the hospital can turn people away, and they do. People who need services. I don't understand why we don't have the political will in this state, and I know it's a countrywide issue. We need to have the political will to fund the whole continuum of care, from the state psychiatric hospital, because some people need that level of care, all the way down to outpatient services with supportive housing and that sort of thing. So DOC can't say, nope, we're not taking this person. They have to take them. Sadly, the state hospital can't do that. So there are a lot of people who could be much better served in a hospital setting than a prison setting, but that's not happening right now.
What is the biggest challenge that the Office of the Mental Health Advocate faces regularly?
I think it's just that. It's extremely, extremely frustrating that the services aren't out there for people who need it, and not only need it, want it. There are long lines for admission into treatment. There are long lines, for example, if you need therapy. It's very difficult to find psychiatrists who accept insurance. It's very difficult to find psychiatrists, period. We have, and it's a nationwide problem that I think Rhode Island really needs to look at a lot closer and come up with some solutions, that there is a lack of providers. Part of the problem in Rhode Island that we talk about a lot is that the reimbursement rate for treatment providers has not changed in something like 20 years. So it's very difficult for the community mental health centers to stay afloat and to hire and retain staff, because sometimes the wages are less than what you would make working at McDonald's. So it's really, that's the most frustrating thing to me, that's the most frustrating thing to me, that we just have not invested in the system of care to keep people living the best lives that they can, and to keep people out of jails and prisons or homelessness, being victimized or being repeatedly hospitalized.
Yes. I feel that stigma and discrimination play a big role in what you're calling the lack of political will. I think that if people who were living with other kinds of medical conditions or serious illnesses, if they would never face these kinds of obstacles to getting the home care they needed or to getting the supportive housing they needed. And I do feel that it's a lack of awareness and understanding about mental illness.
I think that plays a large part of it. I think plays a large role in it.
Have there been any positive changes over the last few years that give you hope or that encourage you?
System-wide, I can't say that much. As far as a very particular part of what I advocate for, Eleanor Slater Hospital, as we all recall, was in danger of basically being shut down to psychiatric patients a few years ago. And that was a hard battle. And that was a very positive step when that reversed course. The governor committed to keeping Eleanor Slater Hospital open. And then with the division of this new state psychiatric hospital that is purely state funded, allows Eleanor Slater Hospital now to collect insurance, to collect Medicaid, so that they can stay afloat and admit the most vulnerable people in our state who really need that highest level of care. So I think that's something that was success, or something that gave me hope. Of course, as many people wouldn't need to be at this hospital if we also invested in the system of care in the community. But that's something that gave me hope. I think another thing is that I've been doing this for a long time. I was a public defender starting 30 years ago, before I was the mental health advocate. I do think that stigma has diminished over time. I can tell you that another positive thing that I've noticed is law enforcement seems very interested in being trained and learning about this population and learning how to better serve people. Back 30 years ago, if I had a nickel for every time I heard a police officer say, "I'm not a social worker, not my problem," I arrest the person and then the courts could take care of the rest of it. That's changed dramatically over the past 30 years. And I find it very heartening that first responders, because they see it, they're on the front line, so they see all of these issues. And most of the law enforcement that I speak with do not want to arrest people who are in a psychiatric crisis. They want to divert them to treatment. And they try very hard to do that, but then they run up against the obstacles that we've discussed. So that's encouraging to me. I think that's a huge culture change that I'm very pleased is finally coming about.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Is there anything else that you think our viewers should know about your office and the work that you do?
I think that it's helpful when people about legislative advocacy and advocating for funding for the system. It's not necessarily about my office, but it would support what we do. If people would tell their stories to legislators, it's very difficult to tell your story. It's very courageous to tell your story, but either people's personal stories or family members, it's important for people who hold the purse strings, as it were, to understand the reality of how this affects people and how lack of funding and lack of services affects people. So that's something that would just help, all of us, I think, not my office necessarily, but certainly the people that we serve. I
second that. Yes, definitely. Yeah. We all need to speak up and share our stories. And I think in doing so, we fight stigma, we reduce, discrimination and shame. And we realize that 1 in 5 adults in the United States will live with a mental illness in their lifetime. It's very prevalent, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, and it affects everyone. Everyone has a stake in nurturing our mental health and getting treatment if we have a mental illness.
Yes, absolutely.
If folks want to contact your office, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to do that is to call. We have a general voicemail, and we, even if we're not able to answer the phone, we check it several times a day, and we try to get back to people within 24 hours. So the phone number is 462-2003. And if people have any inquiries about our office, or if they feel that they need our services, if they leave a message on that, someone will get back to them within 24 hours and assess whether it's an issue we can help with or not.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Meg, for taking the time to explain this and teach us today. And thank you also for everything you have done and are doing for the mental health community. Rhode Island is very lucky to have you as the mental health advocate, and you make a difference in people's lives every day. So thank you very much, Meg.
Well, thanks, Laurie. Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for giving us your time today and for watching this video. And please share this video with other people who it may help. Thanks all. Have a great
Thank you.
day.
Thanks.
Okay.